Hello again, Professor Jared Rathel here. Thanks so much for joining me. In Learning Activity 8.1, we're going to be focused on the greening of our planet, the colonization of terra firma, of dry land by the plants. And to a lesser extent, we'll touch on the fungi as well as the arthropods. So let's dive in. Thus far in this module, we've established that planet Earth is 4.54 billion years old. That's billion with a B. We know that the evidence suggests that the first prokaryotes, the bacteria and the archaea, evolved by some 3.5 billion years ago. And we've also covered the evolution of the larger eukaryotic cell, which is on our planet by 1.8 billion years ago. It's really pretty shocking when you think about it, but for the first billion years of the history of our planet, the terrestrial surface was completely lifeless. As you would expect, the first life forms to colonize dry land are the bacteria and the archaea because they're everywhere. That's estimated to have occurred some 3.2 billion years ago. The cyanobacteria, the blue-green algae, we know they're not algae, but the photosynthetic bacteria, photosynthetic prokaryotes, and the eukaryotic protists are going to colonize approximately 1.2 billion years ago. It's between 470 and 480 million years ago that we find the first direct evidence for the colonization of land by plants. Now, these plants weren't giant sequoias or sunflowers. These were small and comparatively very simple plants, akin to today's liverworts and mosses. On the right, those are fossilized spores that were actually just recently discovered in Australia in 2021, and that's what pushes us back another 10 million years. So most of the biology textbooks still say 470, but that fossil evidence right there suggests that plants were on dry land by 480 million years ago. Meanwhile, the oldest widely accepted fungi fossils date at 440 million years ago, so some 40 million years later. However, recent finds in South China, which are pictured here, indicate that fungi may have colonized land as early as 635 million years ago, preceding plants, and maybe making the land more hospitable to plants. And if we look at this beautiful fossil, it's exquisite. Those thread-like elements, those look a lot like fungal hyphae, which make up the fungus's mycelium. That said, we do have very solid evidence that by 420 million years ago, we have the symbiotic mycorrhizal fungi that have teamed up with plants that we'll talk about in our next module when we focus on plant structure and function and the really important mutualistic relationship between mycorrhizal fungi and their host plants. So the oldest body fossil of a land animal is a millipede, pictured here. It was recovered in Scotland and it dates at 428 million years ago. Millipedes, centipedes, and their relatives are called the myriapods, and there's about 12,000 extant species living today. We're going to cover those when we survey invertebrate diversity later in the semester. So 428 million years ago, however, animals probably colonized land tens of millions of years before as trace fossils. These are fossilized animal tracks and burrows Those show up in England by 450 million years ago. By 385 million years ago, we find fossilized tree roots. And by about 360 million years ago, we enter a very important period known as the Carboniferous period, when the world, the entire world from pole to pole, is covered by swampy forests and these massive tree ferns. So these are giant ferns. It's in the Carboniferous period that plants really take advantage of those vascular systems, which allow them to grow really large. The fossil fuels that power our planet today are derived from the remnants of these great forests. Your vehicle runs on sunlight that was captured by those Carboniferous plants hundreds of millions of years ago. And that is the ancient remnants of those fern forests. This is a 250-foot thick coal seam. You can see the pickup truck for comparison. It's found in the Powder River Basin in Wyoming. So that represents some 60 million years of forests capturing carbon, all safely locked up in that coal, just like it has been for 300 million years. And that carbon, it needs to stay locked up in that coal. If we burn all of that coal and similar deposits in China, our planet will be unrecognizable to the one that we all inherited. So we have very strong genetic evidence from sequencing nuclear DNA as well as the DNA from plant chloroplasts and plant mitochondria. Recall that both of those organelles possess their own circular DNA. 3 lines of genetic evidence that all point to a multicellular lineage of green algae called the charophytes, what you would probably call a green seaweed in this photograph, as sharing a common ancestor with the lineage that we call the kingdom plantae. All terrestrial plants found on the planet today, from mosses growing on rocks in streams and Flagstaff, to the incredible baobab trees found in Africa, all plants evolved from a common ancestor closely related to these charophytes. More specifically, a recent analysis of 900 protein-coding nuclear genes found that specific charophytes, like this Zygnema, that's the name of the genus, this Zygnema algae, are the closest living relatives of the plants. And if you look at this microscopic image of Zygnema, those look a lot like plant cells, don't they?